In today's video, we're going to experiment with milk paint on furniture. I'm Kathy with Waste.Not.Upcycled. I'm a full-time teacher and a part-time reseller and upcycler. But first, a shout out to OK at Home DIY and Shabby with Bling, the creative hosts of Flippin' Furniture Friday. So I purchased this old rocking chair at a garage sale for $2, and that's probably why, as well as this adorable stand. This was $10 at Goodwill. So I secured all of those wooden pieces with Type Bond, and then I was gonna let it dry and finish it after this huge project. Well, that took the whole night, so the next morning I got started. And it was working. Everything was secure. It was rocking. I sat on it and made sure that it was good to go. Both of these pieces are going to be layered as a set. Originally, I was going to mix those two, layer on top a dark green, but found this Oops paint that was a light green for only $2 at Home Depot. So I'm going to go ahead and mix up this milk paint. Now, milk paint comes in powder form, and it's recommended that you go ahead and mix equal parts powder with warm water, and then stir it for a good 3 to 5 minutes. What happens is when you're stirring it, those pigments are released and dissolve, and the longer you mix it, it really allows for that pigment to get into the color. You also want to let it sit for a while, a good 10 minutes or so. So in the meantime, I'm going to go ahead and clean this up. Now, even though this doesn't really need to be sanded, I'm still going to prep it with the prep, and it's kind of similar to sanding it down, and it takes all of the grease, grime, and all of that off of it. You can go ahead and spray it directly on. They do recommend that you spray it onto a towel. I do it either way. So I'm going to go ahead and spray this whole piece down and clean it up in every little nook and cranny. Now, as I mentioned before, my goal for these pieces is that they have a time-worn look. So I'm going to want a little bit of that wood to peek through. I'm going to layer it with that light green in different places. And then I'm going to go ahead and put that dark chippy milk paint over it. So let's see what this Home Depot $2 paint looks like. Not bad. This is the color I was kind of hoping for, and for $2, can't beat that. So I'm going to go ahead and paint this on. I am not going to paint the whole piece. I'm just going to have it peeking out in different sections. So instead of wasting paint on the whole thing, I'm just going to go ahead and put it on different parts. And I'm going to be doing the same thing with the chair. These are kind of going to look like they go together. I will be selling them individually in my booth, but they certainly will look cute together. So I'll be back and forth between both of them. I'm going to go ahead. I definitely know I want that chippy look on the bottom. Okay, let's go ahead, and now we're going to add this to the chair. I'm in the sunlight, so it looks a little bit lighter, but it's the same exact color. And like I said, I'm just going to put it in all different sections. So let's talk about the milk paint that I'm going to be using on top of this. Milk paint is known for being unpredictable. It sometimes can chip and it sometimes doesn't. So I'm going to try to control it with this experiment. So both legs are painted with that first layer, and I'm going to be putting milk paint over it. But before I do that, I'm going to be using a candle. I'm just using one of those little tea light candles in white. You can also use Vaseline, or I know that they make a furniture wax for this as well. Basically, what I'm thinking is if I create a barrier between those paints, it'll chip for sure. So I'm going to go ahead and put this candle all over, all different places. I think I went a little bit heavy, but that's okay. And I'm just going to go ahead and coat it up. See if that barrier protects that milk paint, and it automatically gives it that chippy look. So I'm going to go ahead and put my milk paint over both of these, and then we'll let them dry and we'll come back to it in a little bit. In general, something to know about milk paint is it usually needs a good 2 to 3 coats. That first layer anyway is just kind of a see-through layer, but we'll still try this experiment with that first layer. You also can add more powder if you feel like it's liquidy. There's no perfect science to that milk paint. And I did not add, I probably should have added a little bit more powder to it, but it was fine. Paint is one of the oldest types of paints created. And when it dries, it has a really cool chalky look to it. So we're going to set that on the side. And then I am doing the same process. I already know that I want my edges to be chipped out. So I'm going to practice it on this one. Hopefully that will work as well. I can always go back and distress it if I need to. And I'm going to go ahead and paint this one up. When it comes to milk paint, you can also use a heat gun to kind of give it that crackle and help speed it up a little bit. But I'm working in the really hot sun today, and it's like my own personal heat gun right now. So it's drying pretty quickly. You can actually see it. And I'm going to actually, as this dries, go back and give it a couple coats. Okay, time to go back to those legs, and they're dry. They dried pretty quickly. Even just looking at it, you can see the difference between the legs. You can tell the one that had that wax on it, you could tell it was repelling the milk paint. So what I do is I'm going to go ahead and literally use a cloth and just rub it off. And that, all the spots where I put that wax, that milk paint is chipping right off. It's a great way to control it and guarantee that you're getting distress on it. Well, this seals the deal that for the rest of this chair, I'm going to go ahead and use wax in all the spots I want to go ahead and distress. I'm adding on a third layer of paint to this, and you may notice some of those spots where it didn't completely dissolve, and that's okay. We'll talk about that a little bit later when we sand it out. I already went through and put some spots of that wax onto the chair, and I'm going to go ahead and add that milk paint. This was a busy one with all the different spindles, but with that hot sun, it dried quick and I was able to get lots of layers on. I'm excited about the middle part of this chair. I'm thinking I'm going to be adding paint inlays a little bit later, which will bring in even more detail to this. I still cannot believe that I paid $2 for this chair. I'm excited that I had the chance to fix this thing up. So while the chair dries, let's go ahead and sand this out. Now, I'm not sanding this out to distress it right now. One of the wonderful things about milk paint is when you sand it with a 220 or higher grit paper, it really, really, really smooths it out and it has a buttery soft feeling. So right now, I'm just smoothing out this paint using my finger sander. I think I'm using about a 1000 grit. I'm already seeing some places where it's going to chip even more. So the milk paint worked really well on this. After I go ahead and sand it down, I'm going to pull out my cloth and then I'm going to kind of buff it out. This helps to really soften it even more and then pull out that chippiness. There's definitely some nice natural chipping that took place with this milk paint. After I buffed out the whole piece, I pulled out 150 grit sandpaper, and I'm going to go ahead and anywhere I see raised edges, I'm really going to accentuate those areas. I mentioned earlier that I want this to look time worn. So what I want to do is I want to make sure that any part that has like that really light green, I'm going to go in and I'm going to go ahead and sand it even more so that the wood is popping through as well. So it's kind of a three-toned. So it looks like it's been around a while and it's chipped and there's all different layers, and that just gives it even more of a worn look. Now I'm just going to be spraying the top of this with a satin finish just because I'm going to be adding a paint inlay. So I'm going to let that dry on the side and go back over to the chair. I'm going to be doing the same thing. I'm giving it that quick sand. Now this I've noticed is chipping a lot more. I'm not sanding it to distress it, but it's still popping off some layers. After I sand it with that light sand, then I'm going to go back and I'm going to go ahead and use a cloth and do the same thing. As I think about it, I think the parts that are chipping off a lot more easily are where I put that wax. So it's looking really good. There's definitely some pieces. I'm going to go ahead and wipe it down, like I said, with the cloth. And then I want to give it that three-tone look. So I'm going to give it a deeper sand where the paint chipped off. Now I am going to be adding another layer to this. I'm going to do the paint inlay. So I'm doing a quick coat on top of this. And then these are the IOD paint inlays. I have just recently discovered these. And I'm going to be doing that floral one on top of the smaller table. And then I'm going to be doing, I think that straight one I'll put on the chair. Paint inlays can seem a little intimidating, but they're really not that hard to use. So what you'll need is a water spritzer of some sort. And then for this one, I'm going to be using Big Top Top Coat. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and figure out exactly where I'm going to lay it down. You're going to notice that I use whatever's near me to measure. That's how I measure my items. Anyway, so what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to be putting Big Top. You can use paint, you can use top coat, and I've also used Mod Podge to put paint inlays in. Basically, paint inlay is there's paint on this paper, and then what's going to happen is I'm going to go ahead and spritz all of it down, make sure the paint side is facing down, and then I'm going to put it onto that layer of top coat. And then it's going to kind of transfer over. The paint is actually going to go inlay into the top coat. So you do want to make sure, like I said, you have a decent amount put down. Now, you'll notice that I kind of mess around with it. So you do have a little bit of time to play around if you didn't feel like you laid it in the right spot. So it's not going to permanently affix itself right away. You have a little bit of wiggle room. Okay, then like I said, I went ahead and put that top coat down, made sure, smoothed it out, and then you're going to let it dry completely. Now I'm going to do the same exact thing that I did on here, except I'm going to be doing it down the side. So I'm going to take that paint inlay. I'm going to go ahead and put top coat, same thing. I'm not going to be using paint. I'm going to put top coat down, and then I'm going to be spritzing that paint inlay pretty wet. Make sure the paint side is down, and then I'm going to go ahead and affix it exactly where I want it to go. And then I'm going to let that dry. Now, as I said earlier, I'm working on a hot summer day. So all I did was I stuck my furniture outside in the hot sun and that let it dry. I've also done it where it dried overnight and I was still able to get it out and it worked perfect. So if you've never used a paint inlay or you want to watch a more detailed description of it, I did do a past video where I made an apple basket. It was the first time I ever used paint inlays. Check it out. Okay, this one's completely dry. And once it's dry, what you're going to do is pull out that water spritzer again, and you are going to want to spritz it. Now, my spritzer was moving very slowly because it was almost empty, but you are going to go ahead and spritz it, make sure it's completely wet, and then you can peel it right off. Now, the awesome thing about paint inlays is you can reuse them. They're definitely going to have a more distressed look the second, third time. But even this first time it was kind of distressed, which was so perfect for this piece. Time to take the inlay off of the chair. It's dry, and we're going to do the same exact thing. So we're going to get that wet completely. And you'll notice if it's not peeling off right away, that means that it's not wet enough, and all you need to do is go ahead and really get it wet. Another great way to do it is just to use a wet cloth and rub over it. So I'm going to go ahead and peel it down. As I was peeling, I noticed that just one little section did not, the paint did not come off the way it should have. So I'm thinking I did not put enough top coat. So I'm going to go back and I'm going to put a little bit more top coat, and then I'm going to pull that piece back over it, spritz it again, and let it dry. And I was thinking, how in the world is it going to stay? So I grabbed a piece of tape, taped it on, and I let it dry again. dried pretty quick, so we're going to go ahead and peel it back off, see if this worked. And good. It did. It showed up. Not bad for $12 and a little bit of elbow grease. I'm pretty happy with how these time-worn pieces turned out. Thanks so much for taking the time to watch, and you do not want to miss out on all the other amazing creators who are participating in the Flippin' Furniture Friday. I'll put a link down below for the playlist. It's definitely binge-worthy material.